Hello and welcome to Laser Reviews. My name is Arvid, and today I'll be talking about some more animal horror movies, this time the Piranha franchise. And I will be giving you my opinions on these movies, as well as telling you a bit about the plot. I will try to stay away from any major spoilers. I can't really tell you much about what's going on without mentioning at least a few spoilers. And these are not really movies, anyways, with any plot that deserves being unspoiled. I think that's the way I can phrase it. So, Piranha from 1978 is one of the more famous Jaws ripoffs, and it's not really ashamed about it. It's quite in your face. One of the very first things you see is a woman playing an arcade game of Jaws. And like Jaws, it opens with two teenagers skinny dipping. They are breaking into some weird military base, seemingly abandoned, jump into the pool, as you do, and are eaten by what we still, at this point, don't know. We don't know what's eating them. The movie's called Piranha, so go figure. Then the next scene, our main lead is sent out to track down these people who are now missing. She seems to be a big city woman who is sent to this place in the middle of nowhere in Texas, and she needs help to trek through this to her unknown territory. So she asks the local drunkard, woodsman, or whatever he is, to help her track down these two missing people. And very quickly, they discover this military base, as you do, and walk in to this base full of secret experiments, no locked doors, experiments still going on. See all these weird animals, especially weird fish. We see claymation models walking around in this abandoned lab, and then suddenly they are interrupted by a maniac, this old guy who attacks them. They accidentally release the tanks so that now whatever was inside the pool is now in the river. They quickly realize that what they're dealing with is a genetically modified version of piranha fish that was made during this Vietnam War to kill Vietnamese people. And they are now in this river in Texas, and it's up to our heroes to stop them. Also, downriver is a summer camp for children where the guy, the woodsman, his daughter is there. And even further down, there is this grand opening to this fair or whatever is going on down there where, that's on the path of the fish. And maybe at the end of this river, we find the ocean. And maybe these fish are modified to also survive salt water. And that's the main plot. Now, on paper, this might sound good. It might sound like it could be fun. It's not fun. This movie is, it's not bad on the level of other movies I've seen here. It's not ugly. It's not terribly shot. It is using its low budget wisely. The problem is it's so inconsistent. A lot of the acting is so terrible. The plot is so terribly contrived. And it's just overall such a stupid film that it was impossible for me to enjoy it. And no, there are no good gore or kill effects. So let's start with the positives. I think the first half hour, I had my hopes up that I would see something good, that this would be a good movie. Because it doesn't start out terrible. There is some creativity very early on when they see this lab with all these weird fish monsters. When they set up this whole genetically modified piranha thing. That's all cool. That's all done in the first, I think, 15 minutes of the movie. Then you have this weird guy who breaks out, and at first he's reluctant to tell them anything about what's going on, and they don't trust him, but they still take him with them. Turns out he was a scientist, and he continued working on this project even after the army shut down the project, because it has become his life work that he so engaged with making these weird fish that all he could think of, all that brought him pleasure in life, was to make more and more advanced fish. Without really thinking about it, is revealed that he would never have felt guilty for these fish killing people in Vietnam, because that would be the decision of the army to use them there. It wouldn't be his own decision. He also frees himself of all responsibility, saying that our leads were the ones who freed them into the water, not him. But then when he does get the chance to redeem himself, right after being told that he is responsible, and I do mean right after, I think it's 2 minutes later, he sees a boy on this capsized boat calling out for his father. And while he is on the raft with our other two leads, instead of, just waiting for the raft to arrive at the boat 1 minute later, he jumps into the water, tries to swim to the boy, take the boy off the boat and swim back, and he gets eaten right when he reaches the boy in the first place. So no, he doesn't actually kill the boy as well, because that's actually what his plan would have resulted in. Not only does he get himself needlessly killed, he was risking the boy's life, all because he needed to redeem himself. That is the first scene that really broke me. But then after this first half hour, it starts to slow down a whole lot. The plot starts getting really, really, really stupid. But there was a scene after this that also really just showed me what a terrible movie this is, because what happens is right after this happened and they take the boys to safety, the military shows up. This colonel and this woman who turns out to be a scientist starts not really believing the situation, but also actually believing the situation. And it turns out at first they're trying to bluff, saying that there's no way that this can be happening, while knowing it's true, but trying to cover it up. And they're asking the two leads to remain silent, that please don't tell anyone. The army has it under control, that they have now blocked it off at this dam. So, and that's true, they did block it off at the dam. So please don't tell anyone, this is the army's secret. We don't want this to get out. And you have this scientist lady here who is just the worst actress. She's terrible, and the way she switches for just being a fervent denier to when our main leaders just bring this shimmer of proof, she completely switches to totally agreeing with them. But then she's still really stupid when they show her a map saying, okay, you might have blocked the main path to the river, the dam, they can't go to the rest of the river from that, but there is another smaller river upstream where they can use that to go around the dam. To which her response is, no, they're way too stupid for that, they would never figure that out. The thing is, she worked on the project. She not just worked on the project, but she was a lover to the guy who just killed himself for no apparent reason. So she knows exactly what these fish are capable of. I mean, I will give her that he continued to experiment on them after she left the lab, but she still knows that these fish are more capable than other things, but they will not take it seriously. So even when our leads try to stop it from happening, try to block that river, try to get help to do these things, and the military don't want to hear it, they are arrested by the local police and the local military, and they break out, and nobody runs to do anything about this situation. And turns out the reason why the colonel doesn't want to warn anybody is because he has invested his own money in this fair or whatever's going on. So he is corrupt and in cahoots with the mayor or whatever that guy is. It's just this really, really bad contrived plot. It's really stupid. And then 1 hour into the movie, 1 hour, we get the first massive attack scene. And it's terrible. This group of children who is being attacked by all these fish while they're out swimming. And prior to this, whenever someone was attacked by fish, they would be killed in seconds, given that they would be alone in the water. This time there's so many children that it makes sense that each fish takes on a child each. But the thing is, the children seem to get off quiet, even though it takes a long time for them to get back on land. None of them seem to die, but we do see how the fish bite them in the asses and the feet, and how they basically can't swim into shore. And we also have a really, really bad acting thing here. One of the things I hate most about the movie. So one girl, the daughter of the woodsman, she doesn't want to swim. But this terrible camp counselor, so the leader of the camp, he forces her to swim that day, but she escapes. And point being, she's not in the water when this competition is taking off, where the reason why all the children are in the water. So she can actually save the day. So first, she tries to push this boat into the water, and she looks very careless while doing it, and when that doesn't work because she's not strong enough, she stands up like there's no worry in the world and just waddles around, runs around like a careless, helpless little girl, and just decides to push a rubber dinghy into the water instead. And I cannot do this justice, but when you see this scene, it looks like she doesn't understand what's going on. It looks like she doesn't understand that all her friends are in danger, are being eaten, that all the stress in this situation doesn't get to her, that she doesn't care about it at all, and that she just can't really be bothered with getting help. It's really bad. It just is. But what's actually even worse than that in this scene. So all the children survive. One of the camp counselors gets killed, and she's actually she gets killed so hard that the fish not only eat her, but they pull her away, like biting her and then swimming backwards. Like that's what's going on here, which in its own right is silly because it's the only time the fish do that in the movie. But what's even worse about that? Remember, the reason why these things eat is to feed themselves. They don't kill, they eat to feed themselves. So in the next scene, we see that that person who was eaten and dragged backwards, her body is back up on shore in more or less full condition. She does have this blanket over her, so you can't see how badly mutilated it is. But it does suggest that not only did the fish not eat her, they left her body and continued this swimming away, so people could jump into the water and get the body out. Not that you'd see this. Why is she left on the shore? Why don't the fish eat her? Why? But why do the fish eat everybody else in a matter of seconds? You have a scene where one guy, just dipping his toes in the water, has his feet completely bitten off. It's so inconsistent. So terrible inconsistent. Oh. And then of course we had the final showdown with all these participants in this fair and this river beach. So there might be 30, 40, 50 people in the water in this scene, whereas in the scene with the children, there might have been 15 children in the water. There's the same amount of fish. The amount of fish has not dwindled since then. All these 40 people rushing back to the shore. I don't think they spend more time in the water than the children do. So many of them die. You have a scene just with body bag upon body bag upon body bag on the beach. I think you can count at least 20 people dead and at least 20 more badly mutilated. But then you inspect the bodies. You can actually see the bodies, both on those who are still barely breathing, but also those who are dead. And they might have had a few chunks of the ass bitten off, or a bit of the shoulder bitten off. Not really enough to kill you. So why is it that suddenly now the fish bite you once and swim away? And why is it that the bite is now deadly? It's not like they are poisonous or venomous. It's not established that these fish are venomous. So why is it that suddenly they can kill people without basically doing anything? This movie is bad. This movie is really bad. And of course, the ending is terrible because Scientist Lady is back. And she is such a terrible actress. Oh my god. Oh, there's nothing good about this movie. It's not as bad as some of the other movies I've seen. It's not as bad as Halloween 5. But this is bad. This is really bad. But that's what I can say about this movie. Not a lot happens in it. It has some suspenseful scenes. For example, there's one where when they're on the raft, the fish learn that if they bite the string holding the raft together, the raft will stop being a raft. That is a decent scene. It has some funny dialogue, mostly bad jokes, but it has some things that actually work. But overall, it's just, no, don't watch this. There's no reason for you to watch this movie. It's bad. So, Piranha 2, The Spawning, or Flying Killers, came out in 1982, and it happens to be James Cameron's first movie, though he would probably be a bit ashamed to admit it, as he doesn't really talk about himself as being a part of his CV. And I will just from the get-go say that this is a much more enjoyable movie than the first one. And I will also say that it's remarkable what they achieved with the budget. This budget was around 4 times smaller than the budget of the first movie, yet it's so much more entertaining and they do so much more with it. It's not like they did the technological achievements of the last 4 years at this point would have made it much of a difference. So yeah, quickly plot summary. And that's why I said it was difficult not to spoil these things. This is a direct sequel. So in the last one, it's hinted that the fish will make it to the ocean and that they have adapted to seawater. In this one, it's not that the fish made it by their own, by themselves to the ocean, but that research vessel was carrying them, and It got shipwrecked, and now there's a small group of these fish that are now roaming around this Caribbean island, killing tourists. These are even more genetically enhanced than the ones in the first film, in that they can now fly. So even though, I mean, there might even not be fewer in number, they're just not that many. I think maybe some scenes hint that there might be more than what we see, just in terms of how many bubbles they make in the water. They also still make the same weird sound. But maybe I think the scenes would suggest there might be 20 of them around. So the plot then revolves around one of our leads, who is a diving instructor, and her ex husband, played by Lance Henriksen, who is the local law enforcement. It slowly is revealed that something is going on, that something is killing people in the local area. And they therefore have to try and have the problem contained, though they try to alert the authorities about what's going on. And the driving instructor also works for the local hotel industry. So the hotel businessman, local hotel owner, she tries to have him hold this huge festivity, but he doesn't want to, not believing. It doesn't even seem that he might not even believe that this is real, what's going on, but that he doesn't want to risk the profit of the celebration, because there is this annual celebration where the fish will come to shore and more or less just jump onto shore for all the tourists then to pick them up, and then they're prepared and eaten. And it's a huge event, and there are a lot of tourists who arrive just to see it. So he doesn't want to risk losing out on that. It also turns out that someone is already there, knowing that research ship has wrecked outside of this island, and that they're trying to both cover it up and also solve it. And I'm not going to say who's playing that role in the movie. So that's it with the plot. It's quite basic. This one just tries to be more fun than having a good plot. I would say the other one had more attempts at having a plot, whereas this one is basically just people being attacked, them trying to investigate the situation, and then more people being killed. It's not exactly a comedy horror, but it has so many elements that make it borderline comedy horror because it's intentionally funny. They have this doofus. He actually reminded me a bit of Melvin from The Toxic Avenger. It has all these side characters. A lot of them are terrible people or just really annoying, so you really hope that they die. As in most slasher movies, they would be killed, but I can already say they will not all have their comeuppance. You will probably be frustrated at who dies. It also has a really weird opening scene where two divers go to this shipwreck and they swim into the shipwreck, and then they start having sex, and they take off their masks to kiss underwater, and then they're attacked. And the reason why this is important is because this movie is in some ways even less consistent than the first film, because we do see their corpses later on. So there's no chance for them to escape this vessel. They are attacked in the vessel, and you see them not only take off their masks, but I mean they're completely off. They're completely naked. It doesn't even seem like they have any diving equipment on them. But then later, when we come across one of the corpses, because again, of course, the fish don't eat people, they only eat parts of people and leave the rest of the parts for some reason. Not really explained why they only eat a quarter or something, but you do come across this corpse later on in the movie. The corpse has the entire diving gear on still, so they never took off the gear. I don't know if it's implied that someone else has been swimming there, because there are two corpses of divers in this movie. This person is a woman, though, clearly, and the other corpse is a man, but he's completely dressed up. So unless we have two people swimming down to that vessel, no, two groups of two people swimming down to that vessel, it's just this movie being inconsistent. There is like the big attack scene at the beach where we're expecting this annual thing to happen, but instead it's fish flying out the water. Only a few people die, and one of them is just a guy sacrificing himself. And there's a lot of build up without really any payoff. There is this father and son who are dynamite fishing, and the son gets killed by fish later on in the movie, so the dad wants revenge. So you have a whole scene with him building dynamite in his lab, just really ready to blow all these fish up. And the payoff on that is so weak. I can't say much more about this movie other than, yeah, a lot of these characters in the movie just as filler, as giving it a bit of comedic leeway, because a lot of these characters don't even interact with the fish. They're just there to bring some life to the surroundings of these murders, and to show you what kind of people actually are guests here. And I think it's such a weird decision because in most movies you would connect the people whose characters you're building up, even if they're incredibly one-dimensional as they are here and completely insufferable. You would build them up to be a part of the payoff, and these just aren't. I would also say that the effects of these fish are not bad, whereas the first one used claymation. This one uses dolls, rubber monsters, I guess you could call them. And they look quite okay, especially considering the budget. I mean, they look fake and goofy, but it still kind of works. So in the end, I don't think I can recommend this movie. I don't see why you would watch it, but it's also not that bad. So if you do like the ideas of flying killer fish, sure, watch it. You'll be disappointed probably, but you wouldn't be wasting your time, I would say. So Piranha from 1995 is a almost shot-by-shot remake of the first Piranha movie. There are a few differences to the plot, but I think 90 to 95% of it is just an attempt to make a shot-by-shot remake. And I will therefore not talk about the plot, really. I will talk about the few differences that are to the plot, and then more about what I otherwise have to say about the film. So the major departure is that there is no military in this one, and there is no scientist lady. Instead, other characters take on the same roles as they played because it's so much mimicking the first one that it even has to have the same lines of dialogue in it. Instead of the military, here is only a sheriff who shows up. He takes them to the local business owner, the local tycoon, who is building this new resort. From what I could tell, he borrowed money from the mafia to build this resort. So if it isn't a success, he will probably be killed off. It's a bit vague in exactly what, because he's relying on some euphemisms. I'm not sure. I understand. I think he's referring to the Italian mob, but I'm not sure. It was probably supposed to be funny, and it really isn't, and it also isn't that clever. And yeah, that means that a lot of the dialogue that the scientist lady says, such as those fish will never be smart enough to make it through this small creek of water and circumventing the dam. And it kind of makes sense that it's the sheriff who says it this time, because the sheriff is actually not qualified to talk about these things. Whereas the scientist lady in the first movie would be qualified because she worked on this thing. Also, instead of the colonel being corrupt, it is the sheriff who's corrupt in this one. It also changes a few things towards the ending, but I will not really go into that as it's not that important, and it also would risk spoiling it and the original. Some of the other differences are just gender swaps and ethnic swaps, and they don't really make big difference, only that they kind of do because they also are the reason why some scenes are changed up. So the weird scientists who experimented on these fish, also that lab scene is much less interesting. They don't really have any interesting experiments going on there. The whole facility doesn't look like any research facility. Honestly, that place is completely underwhelming. It wasn't amazing in the original, but this time it just looks like a fucking shack in the middle of nowhere. And it's this weird lady now who's the scientist there. The father and son who are attacked on the river are some of the first victims. Now they're African Americans. And the father is now maybe in his mid-50s, whereas the son is a young teenager. Overall, a lot of the children, I think, are a bit older in this movie than the first one. And that adds a lot to the quality because, honestly, the child actors in this one are good. Mila Kunis is quite possibly the best actress in this movie, and she's quite young. And she's playing the role of the girl in the original one. And it's not Mila Kunis' first role, but it's her first movie role. And honestly, I think she's doing a great job. Most of what I can say that really also sets this apart from the original, the acting here is much, much, much worse. It really is. And it's also a more sexualized movie, in that one of the person playing the camp counselor, or so like the camp leader of the summer camp for the children in the original, I think it's now being played by a woman. But that role is so weird because it does seem like she's ruling the camp and controlling everything. But she's also this very loose woman who wants to do everything to further her career and just wants to have sex with any man she really sees. At least that's how it seems. And she's very self-obsessed and doesn't care about the children at all. And she straight up dies in the movie the day before the big competition is taking place. and nobody's talking about why she's missing. It's really weird. It's just it's like they cram so many different roles into her that she doesn't make sense as a character. So, and because of these things, it's much worse. One thing I really don't like about the movie as well, they took all the female characters and made them very attractive, and took all the male characters and made them much less attractive than they were in the original film. In the original one, people weren't necessarily unattractive, but they were quite mediocrely attractive or unattractive. They weren't really sticking out much in one way or another. In this one, it's a really big departure in that the women look like supermodels. Our lead looks like a supermodel. Camp counselors look more or less like supermodels. And the men just are aged much more than the original one, and they also just look worse. So that is a change that I can't really approve of that much. It does feel not forced, just a bit too much. I don't know. Because it also ends up making every single relationship unbelievable, because a lot of these women seemingly in this movie, maybe except for from the lead, are interested in men for the physical aspects, not so much for anything else, or maybe if it can further their career. And these men are not really made into successful men career-wise, interesting men, or pretty men. So it just makes everything unbelievable. And honestly, I'm a bit grasping at straws for what I can talk about regarding this movie, because that's just one of the major aspects that did frustrate me a bit. But as I said, all the acting is really, really, really bad. It's shot so bad that you can't see what's going on. It's really, really ugly. The sound design is bad. The sound the fish make is even worse in this movie. Overall, it's a much worse movie than the original. But I will actually give it just one positive. The scenes where the piranhas attack seem much more realistic and make much more sense. For example, when the children are attacked, they are trying to stay above water, and they all have these different floaty things they can cling on to, and it does have one man running in to help them, and he's pretty much chewed up. And that explains why they are not just all dying, because the first one really didn't explain that at all. Also, Mila Kunis is doing decently in that situation. She doesn't look as shocked or as scared or as much in a rush as you might hope for, but she's doing a much better job than the girl in the first film. It's the similar thing when they do that whole attack scene on all the tourists at the resort. It actually shows people being chewed up. It shows people, it makes sense why people die, because it's much more horrifying. They do eat up people more. They don't just take a few bites and nips and then move on to the next target. People are actually quite horribly mutilated by these things. So even if you don't understand why every single person dies in this movie, of those who die, it does make sense that they are brutalized by these fish. That the fish actually seems like a much bigger threat than they did in the original. I would also say that the practical effects are not amazing, but they are better than in the original. And it actually does show the aftermath. This one has all the children standing and trying to tend to the wounds. They are completely shocked. They're traumatized for life. They have all these small wounds from where they've been bitten. And there's one guy who has his legs bitten off, one of the counselors. I don't know, he's still not passed out. And I think if he hadn't died at that point from blood loss, at least he should have been passing out or something. That's one of those things that don't really make sense. But overall, I will actually applaud it for how it portrays the attacks. And it has one terrible line of dialogue that I absolutely disliked. So before the crazy scientist lady dies, they do ask her how dangerous these fish are, and she explains that they kill more people annually than sharks. So I assume by they she means piranhas in general, not these piranhas, because these piranhas only live in her lab, and they, unless she's been feeding them people, that wouldn't really be the case. So let's just say that he's talking about all piranhas in the world. Now I did a bit of research, not much, but a bit of research, and there hasn't been any really recorded piranha attack, especially not fatal piranha attack, on humans. I have seen some documentaries some time ago suggesting that there might have been some attack somewhere in the Amazons if the piranhas are especially desperate and hungry. There are no proven attacks on humans like this. So that means that the real figure here is 0 attacks annually. And then I read that there are about 70 shark attacks annually. 70, annually on a global scale is not a lot. And these are unprovoked shark attacks. Of these, maybe 15 to 20% of them are lethal. And remember, she says that the piranhas kill more people than sharks do annually. So let's be generous and say that there are, on average, 35 deadly sharks attacks globally every year. That's not a lot. So she's basically saying that these piranhas are mostly harmless. I might have been spending way too much time on this one line of dialogue, but it just demonstrates how bad this movie is, how stupid it is. I'm just frustrated by remakes that do nothing but just remake shot by shot and even do a worse job. It was the same thing I had with the Omen remake. It's awful. Really, don't watch this movie. There's no reason to watch it. Okay, even though it does do a few things better than the original movie, everything else is worse, so I will give it a worse recommendation than the original one, and I didn't give the original one a recommendation in the first place. Piranha 3D from 2010. So this was actually the first Piranha movie I'd seen prior to doing this video. And I think especially what I'd forgotten is just how amazing this cast is. Of course, a lot of these people were not that well known at the time. Most of these performers are what really end up making this movie quite an enjoyable experience. This cast is so much better than any of the other Piranha movies I've seen so far. And it might actually have the best cast of any horror movie in any of the horror movie franchises I have reviewed. There are probably a few exceptions. I can't think of them here, but maybe some of the Halloween movies had better casts. My voice might also be different because, contrary to how I usually do this, I haven't had much time lately. So I've had to watch the time that's passed since I watched this and watched the first film. I think it's almost 2 weeks now. 2 weeks have passed. So I've also reviewed them individually the day after watching them, which is again not that common for me. Normally I just review them all after having been watching them all, so I can make better commentary. Just haven't had the time to do that. Anyway, so this is, I guess it's a remake. It's really hasn't anything to do with the first one. It's a completely new story. So it's to some extent this one and the sequel to this one are a franchise in their own right, but of course they do lend to the name. They even do pretty much copy the poster for the first film. Well, that mixed with Jaws, I should say. And this is definitely a horror comedy, and it's doing it quite well. Yeah, it's just done well. This is a movie that knows how that knows how to entertain you, and then kind of knows how to do references well without making them overdone. For example, so I should talk about the plot briefly. The movie opens up with Richard Dreyfuss being out on this lake fishing. I'm not sure it says where this is supposed to be, but it's a very dry state. So maybe this is supposed to be Arizona or somewhere in California, or maybe still somewhere in Texas, but it's a lake somewhere. And all of a sudden he hears this earthquake. And this earthquake has opened up this cavern system that has been closed off from the rest of the world, or at least the rest of the lake, for millions of years. And he's then eaten by these piranhas. And this attack is honestly not very good. There's a lot of bad CGI in it. I would say that the boat is probably even CGI'd in this one. At least it looked really weird. And of course, having Dreyfuss in this role is just because he played the lead in Jaws. So it's a nice homage. Anyway, I'm really way too slow about this. The plot is quite simple. The lead is this teenager or university student, college student, who lives in this town with his mom and his sister, and his mom is the local sheriff. And he has this crush on this college girl he used to study with, I think. Maybe it seems like he no longer lives there, or maybe it's just for the spring break he's there. It really doesn't matter too much. But he has a crush on this girl who hangs out with these jocks, these typical douchebags who are actually quite well done. The sister is also decent. He meets this very attractive British lady who turns out to be a porn actress working for this very sleazy porn director who hires this guy as a location scout because he's local, so he knows the lake, and he's a bit reluctant, but he realizes that the woman he's after doesn't really seem to be that interested in him. Oh, she kind of does, but he also seems to have something going with other guys, so I don't know, he's young, dumb, and full of cum, as the expression goes, I think. And he goes out, becomes his location scout, while the sheriff lady goes around trying to figure out what's up with this lady, why people are starting to disappear. I should also know that one of the police officers is played by Wing Rhimes. I love Wing Rhimes. He's not in many movies. Unrelated to this, I watched Striptease for the first time yesterday. Wing Rhimes is the best thing about, no, the second best thing about Striptease. The best thing about Striptease is Burt Reynolds. The worst thing about it is pretty much everything else. But yeah, that's good. He's nice in that movie. I really wish he were in more movies. So they're trying to investigate this while this guy hangs out on this boat with these girls. And the director, by the way, he's played by the boyfriend from Scream 2. So we have seen him before on this channel. He's really good at being an asshole, and you really want to see him get his comeuppance. And he does get his comeuppance. I will not spoil everything, but I will spoil his comeuppance because that's good. There's also this, I forgot his name, but he's in a lot of movies. He is in Best Friends. He's playing the real estate agent in Best Friends, who is in 2 scenes or something, and then one photograph somewhere. He's in this before he made it big. Well, he's not really A-list right now, but I've seen in a lot of things, so I know he's at least out there somewhere. So anyway, he invites protagonist love interest on the boat, and what I do like about this movie is she's young, she just wants to have fun, she's intelligent, but also loose. A lot of the time in these movies, the female characters are supposed to be very virgin-like, very prude, or if they aren't prude, they die. So I do like that they do change it up a bit. That hey, a girl can have fun. She's invited on a boat. She's not really asked to partake in any of these adult activities. I mean, I can see why she would say yes to this, especially because it's not really explained if that is the case, but it is. I would suppose it might also be a bit to spite the protagonist, because she doesn't really. She laughs a bit. She doesn't really think. It doesn't seem like she really dislikes the protagonist for going on this boat or thinking he's a sleazy creep or whatever. But I do think that it is a part of the flirt or the game she has going with him, that she also wants to come onto the boat and tease him a bit and see also what he's up to, maybe preventing him from seeing other girls. You have to read a bit between the lines, but not too much, and I might be, again, reading too much into this, but I do like that aspect of it. And as the movie goes on, she gets more and more drunk, and the director becomes more and more sleazy and more of an asshole, kind of pushing her into first doing body tequilas on a girl, and then when she has done that, he's tried to get her into even more stuff, and she's so drunk that she almost goes along with it. Only that things happen to intervene. At the same time, the police lady meets up with Christopher Lloyd and Adam Scott, who are local wildlife experts. They own this aquarium or whatever, or fish store or whatever it is. And it's revealed that this fish they found because they find one of these piranhas. This prehistoric piranha is a species that went extinct 2 million years ago. So that's why they know it's old. And the reason why they're so fierce is that they have the only way to survive this cabin system they've been locked inside was to eat each other, meaning that only the strongest of them could survive. And they also grown blind, so they no longer see, meaning that wherever there is motion, they'll be attracted to. Like they will go where the most motion in the water is. And that is important for later, because that would explain what otherwise might be a plot hole. Slowly it leads up to this big finale, because it's a spring break, so the beach is completely littered with boats, partygoers. It has this floating stage where the partygoers are having fun. You know, a lot of really stupid drunk people, young stupid drunk people, just doing their water drunkenness thing. I don't know, I've never been on a spring break. I don't know if it's realistic in this way, but you know, it starts off with showing this going on, so you already know by the end of it that this will probably be a good climactic finale, complete mayhem, probably. And of course, the sheriff then tries to stop it by, you know, appealing to the senses, saying that you should not go into the water, but they're drunk and they will not listen to authorities. So before we get to that scene, I should note that we do see some attacks before this. For example, one of the porn actresses on the boat is Gianna Michaels, who is famous for her on-screen, off-screen, no-nonsense attitude. She has brought a lot of laughs into porn, I guess, because she's just a bit fun and a bit cool and a bit entertaining, more so than most other porn actresses. She's only in it very briefly, though. I forgot what you call it, but she's tied to this thing that drags her across, so she's kind of floating in the air being pulled closer to the water and further away, and she has her tits out, and they try to film it, and she ends up falling into the water and being eaten as one of the first victims. One thing, again, this movie does what I disliked about the other movies. The first victim, Richard Dreyfuss, his body is discovered later in the movie only partly eaten. So again, why would the first victim, why would all these piranhas just eat pieces of him and then move away? It really doesn't make sense, especially when you see what they do later on in this movie. How quickly they just eat up people. Even her legs are gone in seconds. Okay, so that's explained. Let's move back to the beach. Carnage ensues. So there are hundreds of people in the water. And there are hundreds of piranhas. Unlike the first two movies, or the first three movies, where there were maybe, 20, 30 piranhas at most. In this movie, there are just hundreds of them, and they're swarming these people, and they're eating them up, and people are screaming, and they're trying to climb on anything they can to get out of the water, usually ending up dragging other people with them on their boats, and they climb onto the floating stage, but they too much weight, so it tips over, and, just people dying left and right, being completely chewed up. There are a lot of good boat kill scenes where one boat just ends up decapitating a guy. I think it's actually Eli Roth. It decapitates, who's also a complete asshole in this one. It's just a very small role. It also has one absolutely fantastic kill in it. Just one guy completely panicking. He has a boat. He wants to get the hell off. Well, hell onto the beach, hell out of the water. So he just takes a speedboat and just tells people to get out while he just rams through this horde of screaming, bleeding people who are stuck in the water. And ends up that one of the people, her hair gets entangled in the propeller of the boat, so he's stuck, and people are slowly trying to climb the boat, and he has to escape the situation. So he tries to rewind, like reactivate the engine and it ends up, after trying a few times, it starts up again, but by when it pulls off her hair, it just pulls her face with it. It looks really good. So this movie has a lot of really bad CGI. The fish themselves are okay, but what it does have is just tons and tons of special effects, of gore, of entertainment. If you like bloody gore movies with that are centered around humor rather than sadism, so like. Yeah, a good example would be that the Terrifier franchise is sadistic horror, sadistic torture porn. This is not torture porn, this is just fun gore. This is the fun kind. So yes, it's good, it's fun. Meanwhile, the boat with all the porn actresses is stuck in the water. It gets entangled on some seaweed or something, I don't know, some kelp, whatever. So they're trying to find out what to do. In the meantime, they ended up, the sister and one of her friends defied the protagonist's order of them to stay home while he was supposed to babysit them. So they get stuck in the water on an island, and they are helped onto the boat, where it's revealed that this porn producer is an even bigger asshole. He just doesn't care about anyone. Then things start happening on the boat. The love interest is stuck downstairs with this room slowly filling with water and hence fish. Whereas the guy, the director, falls into the water, has his legs completely chewed off, even his penis. I mean, when he comes onto land, dragged onto the boat, he's, oh, they took my penis. Or he doesn't say, oh, but the only thing he can mutter is, they took my penis. They took my penis. Okay, I don't know why I'm so bad at doing these voices, but anyway, I just found it funny. And you see this scene of these fish, one fish biting his penis underwater, and then another fish tries to grab it out of that fish, and then another fish comes and eat all of it, and then spits out the penis because it's too shitty of a penis to eat. Another good scene is when fish eat one of the porn stars. Her body disappears, just chewed up, and then upfloats to implants. It's a much better implant than in the Scary Movie franchise, to be honest. I don't know, there's so many good things about this movie, and I said earlier that something was important for something not to be a plot hole. But honestly, saying what that is would spoil something I don't want to spoil. But I will say something that is absolutely hilarious about this movie as well. The police officers, when they try to help these people at the beach, start shooting the piranhas with shotguns, precision aiming them so well that fish trying to eat some are shot without the person they're trying to eat getting injured, and they're just doing it repeatedly like these. I understand they're desperate, and it's maybe the only thing they can do. But it's just so silly that he starts just to start shooting these fish with this shotgun. But while that is building up, and while you're already sitting there amazed that this is the solution and that this is actually working, especially shooting fish through water with these pellets, because I don't think they would really fly fast enough to like the velocity isn't great enough to penetrate the water with a sufficient enough speed to kill these fish. I could be wrong, but while that might be stupid already, Sheriff Lady shoots a fish with a taser. She shoots the taser through the water, hits the fish, and kills it so that it explodes. It's not an amazing movie by any means, but I think since watching this is the best horror movie I've seen since I watched the Friday the 13th franchise. Of course, I mean for this channel, I mean not privately I've seen better movies, but this is at least the most entertaining movie I've seen on this channel for a very long time. This is very watchable. You should watch this. This is a good stuff. This is what this channel is about, finding the good stuff. So Piranha 3 Double D came out the year later in 2011, and this is so far the final film in the franchise, and what a terrible movie to end with. A direct sequel that nonetheless actually doesn't really play that well with the first one. It opens up with a news report about it now being a year since the events of Piranha 3D, and that this town it took place in is now a ghost town, and the speculation that this might happen anywhere in the US. And the movie doesn't really do a good job at the geography, at telling you where these locations are and how far there's between them, because it is hinted at, and I think actually outright explained in the movie, that the location of this new place, it's not really. It is probably a town. Where does this take place? It's this water park, and you don't really see much else. So you don't know if there's a town connected to the water park. You don't know if it's just a water park in the middle of nothing. And to call it a water park is also an overstatement. You see 2-3 different pools and a slide, and that's pretty much it. This is a glorified pool. A glorified pool where all the lifeguards are strippers. So the owner of this place is played by the guy who plays the sports anchor in Anchorman. He's also in a few different things. He's usually a decent actor, and I think it's more the material he's given in this movie, because he's really not good in this movie. Or rather, nothing is good in this movie, so it's not really his fault, but he's playing this asshole stepdad to our lead character, or female lead, I should say, who is also part owner of the park. The mom has died, so she owns 49% of it, but because he owns 51% and has the majority, he can decide what he wants to do with the park. So he has fired all the professional lifeguards and replaced them with strippers and attractive women, often not even able to speak English, who of course don't know what to do with that job. Here, this park also has this huge event. I mean, huge for being such a small place with such a limited customer base. But yeah, you don't really know how far away this is from the place in the first movie, but they do go to Christopher Lloyd's place because these fish come back. So our leads go to him to find out what's going on, and they are really quick to react to this. They do find a fish very early on in the movie, so they're really quick to react, to go to him and try and investigate what's going on. Because the reason why they know about him is not just because of the events that took place in the first film, but since those events, he has written a book. He has also become an internet celebrity in a way, because he has made one video ranting about these fish and the potential harm. It has millions of views on YouTube, so that's why they know of him. It seems like they go to him and return home in a few hours. So, but what really does make sense is all the piranhas in this movie are actually X, so it might only be the X that made it. Well, that really ruins the cliffhanger of the first film. I didn't mention it because I didn't want to spoil it, but at the end of the Piranha 3D, we are told that the piranhas that we're facing in the movie are actually only spawnlings. I don't know, I forgot what they're called, but baby fish, or not even adolescent fish. So we see this big piranha at the end of the first film, So, that cliffhanger would suggest that in this movie, there would be big piranhas, not small piranhas, but no, they copped out of that one. All the piranhas in this movie, actually, most of them are smaller than in the previous movie, because they are all these baby piranhas, so they do grow old very, very quickly. Seems to take a day or two from being a few centimeters long to being, well, the size larger than an actual normal piranha. I don't know, increasing in size 4, 5, 6 times in the matter of a few days, which is really stupid. But yeah, that's that. I should also note that the movie opens with Gary Busey. He's only in it for a few minutes before he dies, but he does manage to bite off the head of one of the fish that attack him and spit it out, and that's at least enjoyable in a way. I'm grasping at straws here because I really don't want to talk about this movie because it's awful, but I also have to explain why it's awful. Meanwhile, my upstairs neighbor is walking around, making my table shake, affecting the microphone. So just to get the plot over with quickly, the movie opens with three different couples and an ex-boyfriend. No, sorry, two couples, the female lead and our male lead, who is in love with the female lead, and then there's the female lead's ex-boyfriend, who is this Chad policeman, who is also a corrupt policeman. And that's it. Those are really our main characters, and two of them are killed off very quickly in a scene that is actually somewhat decent, if not really stupid. So they're in this van. The girl uses these cuffs she takes it and then locks him to this thing in the car. Only one of his hands, and then as they're about to get it on, the van starts moving and moves into the lake, because of course they parked it right next to a lake, why wouldn't they? And it's at this time that the piranhas come out. Water is pouring into this and they can't find the key for the cuffs, so he gets slowly eaten. She, instead of going back on land, I actually have no idea why the fuck she died. It's not like the car was far out into the lake from what I could gather. It was only... I don't know, this scene is actually really bad now that I think about it. Sorry, yeah, no, nothing about this is good. A couple, but not our lead. They're skinny dipping, and while skinny dipping, a baby fish swims up the vagina of a girl, and she's a virgin. They haven't had sex together, these two. And they get out of the water. She doesn't know what had just happened. This leads up to... Oh, this hurts my head thinking about it. The next scene, there's this hint that she might be pregnant because she starts having all these pregnancy symptoms. And then she thinks she's about to die in an even later scene, resulting in her asking the boyfriend to fuck her so she doesn't die a virgin. But as she fucks her, the fish bites his penis, and he can't shake it off. So he goes to grab a knife and cuts off his penis to get it off. But this doesn't make sense on so many fucking levels. He doesn't even try to cut off the fish first or kill it, because what it's doing is biting his penis. So at that moment, the only threat is losing his penis. But what he does to get this threat to his penis away is to cut it off with a knife. This movie boggles me. This is so messed up. And for whatever reason, that fish was just hiding in this woman's vagina for 24 hours or something, and never bit her or anything, only made her feel sick. Again, why would she start throwing up for having a fish in her vagina? It can't move around a lot. Or is it implied that it swam? No, that's not how the female body works. This is so stupid. Oh my god. This is such an awful movie. I haven't even mentioned how all the acting is so much worse, how the cast is so much worse, how nothing is funny, all attempts at jokes are bad. I didn't laugh a single time, I didn't even smirk. And on top of that, often the idea is that the sequel is bigger and more wild. They have to up the game of the previous movie. But the thing is, the previous movie had this huge Carnage scene at the beach that was amazing. This movie takes place in a pool, meaning that there are much fewer people, that all the people in it have a much closer distance to actually get safe on land. the cast is much smaller. There's much less at stake, really. It feels so cheap, this movie. And I haven't even mentioned David Hasselhoff. Because yes, David Hasselhoff is in this movie. It's not even his first movie I talk about on this channel. He's also in Anaconda 3, which he mentions in this movie because he's playing himself. To be honest, David Hasselhoff was never cool. He has become a meme. How did he get this popularity? He was never amazing. He was never a good actor. He was in two popular shows, Knight Rider and Baywatch, and that's pretty much it. He tried to make some songs that were terrible. He hasn't done anything since then. How the hell do people still praise this guy? No, and he can't act. He's such a terrible actor, and he's playing himself being so full of himself. And honestly, there are some ideas here that could work because he's hired by this water park, as they call it, to promote it. And he's promoting it as the guy he plays on Baywatch. I think, is it Mitch or something he's called in that show? And he's in that uniform, and everybody loves him, and everybody wants to take pictures with him, and all the young girls and older women, they all love him. And as a part of promoting the place, he's just given the place in the lifeguard chair. So he's just sitting there for the rest of the movie, more or less, just looking at these people swimming, pretending to be a lifeguard. And it's supposed to be funny that this young kid walks up to him believing he's a lifeguard and doesn't know who he is. And David Hasselhoff hates this kid for not knowing who he is. Okay, when I said I didn't smirk a single time, there is this one moment with David Hasselhoff that is actually okay, because the piranhas find a way into these pools and start eating people. And David Hasselhoff is sitting there in the chair, not moving a muscle, not flinching, not reacting to anything happening. You can see people in pools of blood and people screaming everywhere. He just keeps telling people, I'm not a lifeguard. I never was. I'm not going to get involved in this. Yeah, he even says, the fish are only a problem as long as you're in the water. Just get up on land. Which is true. Because this movie, there's no reason why the people are not moving onto land. Why are they saying that? The people you can see in this shot are just paddling, treading water in the pool while being slowly eaten, maybe? Nobody's actually trying to get out of the water. You have so many of the people who actually are killed in this movie are just killed because they're not trying to get out of the water. I mean, some of them are killed legitimately for good reasons, but a lot of them are just, not doing anything about what's happening. And then finally David Hasselhoff decides to go save this ginger kid. But the reason why I smirked at that scene was you hear this boy crying out for help, and then David Hasselhoff does this dramatic look over his shoulder, and the camera zooms in, and now it seems like that the movie wants to tell you now he will no longer just be a dumb, arrogant asshole. This is his moment to shine. He will suddenly spring into action and become the hero. And then he doesn't. He just looks back and can't be bothered helping this kid. And it happens multiple times. And then he anyway decides to help the kid, which, I don't know. I smirked the first time he looked over his shoulder. The rest of it is just bullshit, to be honest. I don't think I can convey to you that this is not the worst movie I watched here doing these reviews, but it is frustratingly bad. It is shot rather well. It is not ugly to look at. The sound design is terrible, though. There are so many really bad scenes, so much bad slow motion. You have a guy being decapitated by riding this gator or whatever they're called, this, like the things they also have at airports or whatever, at 30 kilometers an hour maybe, into a piece of plastic string. Not even a thin piece of plastic string. It's used for these banners, so it's at least a centimeter or two, or maybe 3 or 4 centimeters wide, and that decapitates him completely. There are some people I can't mention here because it would spoil it, but there are some people you expect to actually die in the first film, but they show up here. Also, they didn't really have any connection with each other in the first film, but now they're the best friends. Makes no sense. And one of them now has a shotgun leg, so he lost his legs, and now he's back. in this wheelchair, but he also has prosthetic legs, and one of the prosthetic legs has a shotgun. It's never revealed how he reloads it, how he can shoot with it, or whatever, but he manages to save one girl and everybody's happy, and then they disappear from the movie. They save one person, and then they're out of the picture. While everybody's still getting eaten all over the place. It's that bad. The movie is that bad. It's just another stupid moment in a really stupid, bad movie. And I think I'm done. I'm sorry if this review of this last movie sound just was all over the place and not too good, but honestly, it just killed me. And unlike my other videos where I actually do talk about all the movies in one big stretch, one big go, here I don't even have that excuse. I made the review half an hour after watching the movie. It's just, I think that's actually why this is so difficult to talk about, because this movie fried my brain. It killed my brain cells. It's really bad. It's just really stupid, really bad. Don't watch it, okay? Don't. But that means we are at the end of the line. I can definitely recommend Piranha 3D. That's a really good movie, or really entertaining movie. Piranha 2 is watchable, but not good. The first Piranha and the remake are bad. Not extremely awful, just bad. And Piranha 3 Double D, because you had 3D the year before, it makes it so easy to compare these two movies, because essentially they try to do the same thing. I think 3DD is just a really good example of how not to do things, but just don't watch it. Don't watch it. With that being said, you can check out my Letterboxd for reading my written reviews, seeing what else I'm up to. Otherwise, stay tuned. I really can't be bothered with this anymore. Fuck this movie. Oh, yeah, and this franchise, I guess. Bye.